We're now joined via Teams by Nebal Farsakh, the spokesperson for the Palestinian Red Crescent Society. Nebal, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Just paint a picture in terms of how the situation is currently on the ground. Of course, we know in just the past few hours, dozens of Palestinians who were seeking refuge, from various refugee camps have now been killed.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. The situation in Gaza is just worsening. All areas in Gaza, whether north of Gaza, central of Gaza, and south of Gaza, have been under intense bombardment. The previous day, Israel's intensified its shelling for the area of central of Gaza, and even the area at the south, which is Rafah, where Israel is forcing people to live there, was also under attack. There is no safe place in Gaza, and everywhere is just unsafe. The humanitarian suffering is unprecedented, with the entire population lacking access to food, water, as well as even medicines and shelter, since there is no safe place to go to. And people are suffering starvation, dehydration, as well as getting infectious diseases such as respiratory, digestive, and skin diseases due to overcrowded and shelters. Over 90% of the Palestinian population are now internally displaced in various areas in south of Gaza, and many families have already fled many times, like 4 or 5 times from a place to another. They have even run out of places and just simply don't know where to go. And it's the same situation as for the healthcare workers. They are also under target. At least over 310 Palestinian healthcare workers have been killed since the beginning of this war. Over 100 are still under arrest. And we simply, as a humanitarians and healthcare workers, we don't feel safe at all conducting our humanitarian missions in Gaza. Since the beginning of this war, I have lost 4 colleagues. 4 Palestinian Red Crescent paramedics were killed while they were on duty. Another 5th paramedic, he is a volunteer. His name is Osama. His home was bombed in Jabalia. Osama was a dedicated volunteer. He refused to leave north of Gaza and insisted to continue providing his life-saving services until the day his home was bombed in Jabalia. We have also another volunteer. He is part of the psychosocial support team. He did great work with children, trying to alleviate their suffering during these tough days. And he lost his life in a bombardment in Khan Yunis. At least 28 Palestinian Red Crescent paramedics were injured. 13 ambulances went completely out of service for the Palestinian Red Crescent. 18 other ambulances were damaged also for the Palestinian Red Crescent while they were on missions to evacuate the wounded people. The conditions our teams are working under are extremely dangerous, extremely unsafe, and they are under target every single hour. When our paramedics leave our EMS center, they don't even know if they are going to come back or not. They are working tirelessly and selflessly, trying to save people's lives, although they are every single day, they're having personal losses. They have lost their loved ones, their children, their parents, and they still have dedication, trying their best to save others' life.
Nebal, of course, you are painting a very grim picture, one that we have been hearing every single day. In fact, a delegation of clerics from South Africa who visited the area also paint a similar picture. In fact, a vigil will be held in South Africa for all of those healthcare workers and journalists who have passed. In terms of the UN, labeling Gaza, and as you rightfully said, that there is no place to hide, they've labeled it a gravesite a graveyard, especially for children. Over 8,000 killed to date. As the Red Cross Crescent, what are you calling for in terms of world leaders who are watching this, what many have labeled a genocide?
Our message to the international community is to intervene immediately. This war has going for so long. 3 months of entire population have been wiped out. Children and civilians are paying a high cost of this continuous war. We're talking about over 21,000 Palestinians. Most of them are children and women have lost their lives since the beginning of this war. Over 54,000 Palestinians, also many of them are children and women, are now injured. Many of them are still in pain because of the catastrophic health conditions. Over 8,000 Palestinians are still missing under the rubble, and the suffering is just continuous. We're talking about 90% of the people are now internally displaced. All human rights have been violated in Gaza. Neither one is still existing. The right of life, people are losing their lives. Children, women, and everyone. The right of education. This is the 3rd month Palestinian kids in Gaza have not went to school. All human rights. Food, there is no food. Drinking water, there is no drinking water. Shelter, there is no shelters. Even over 300,000 residential buildings have been destroyed, and the suffering is just still continued. Civilians should not be a target, and the international humanitarian law is crystal clear. Civilians, healthcare workers should not be a target. We call the international community to intervene immediately to put an end of this continuous suffering.